Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. Okay, do we value ourselves or what happens to us? You know, I observed something this morning, right before actually I gave this talk, which inspired the episode. Okay. So I guess what happened actually that inspired this episode was that I was parked right now I'm parked outside of a Starbucks using the Starbucks Wi-Fi. This nice car parked beside me. The car went so forward in the parking spot that it hit its spoiler to the curb. And then there's this guy that comes out of the car, and then he has this very beautiful girlfriend. The girlfriend comes out of the car, and the guy says, "I'm so unlucky," right? And the girlfriend says, "No, don't worry about it, all that stuff." And then for a moment, I was looking at this guy's car and his girlfriend and everything, and I'm like, yo, this guy thinks he's unlucky. And then I thought, wow, look at what it is. You could have so many things in your life, but what happens to you may justify how you think about all of it. Do you know what I'm saying? So we, as creatures, have an objective side, have an objective existential life. And we have a subjective experiential life. The reason people may not be satisfied with what they have, and then based on the new thing that happens to them, they justify their value. This means that in order for the human being to truly feel wealthy, it has to have an incredible memory. And so really the point of this episode is that we may objectively be satisfied with our lives. We may have objectively, what we want, right? But then, even if we objectively have it, we're still looking for subjective perfection. You understand? The species, even though it's imperfect, it's seeking perfection. We seek perfection in the outer realms. This is why there's so many gym memberships. We seek perfection in the inner realms. This is where a majority of people's hard-worked life savings go. To educate us about a world we don't understand. But that sentence can be heard in two ways. To educate us of a world that we don't understand, in the sense we don't understand the world. That means the education is hollow, and the other view is to educate us in a world we don't understand. But anyways, throughout the years I've learned that when it comes to the experience of life, one has to quickly become content with the isolated nature of consciousness. You see, it's about existence, but once you've been existing, then it becomes about experience. Once you've been experiencing your existence for some time, then it becomes about your presence. Then the relationship of living on this planet does not become one of an object-subject, but rather becomes a presence that watches both of them happen. Right? So it's kind of like we're in the body right now, right? But the future generations will not be in their body. Their bodies will be moving within their experience. Right? This is a suggestion that the minds of human beings will move faster than their bodies. So I guess the observation is this, that do we value ourselves based on what we have? You know what it is? The value that we have is not enough. We are an intelligence that never reality will be enough for us. Because in order for reality to be enough, it has to be a picture. How do we value ourselves? We value ourselves based on what has happened to us, right? Our value arises from our experiences. Really, this life is so fascinating because you could be whatever. Let's say you're the greatest painter on the planet, okay? And you've in some sense drawn your painting, next level paintings. People know you're like a champion when it comes to your craft. But it's like what I'm trying to tell you is that it's like, okay, let me use a different example. Let's use chess. You could be a chess master. You could have incredible chess games. You could even be a grandmaster. Like you could have won the chess. Let's say you've won tournaments. Okay. So it doesn't matter what you have conquered, it's the new experience. This is the key thing we have to realize, that human beings could do anything. You could be a conqueror, but then somebody could come and make fun of you, and then you'd feel like shit, right? So you'd be that'd be a very weak conqueror. A guy who's conquered nations, and then somebody's like, yo man, I don't like the way you rule, and he's like, you don't? Oh man. So what I'm trying to say is, human beings, we're creatures that we work with value systems. This is very obvious. If you haven't noticed this yet in this lifetime, then you need to catch up. Every human being you see has a value system. Every person you like and dislike, they have their own likes and dislikes, which means their value system. Now the thing is, we experience something, we identify as it, it becomes us, but if we find that we get a new experience, you know what it is? There's a term in Farsi called jambe, they say, like, if somebody cheats or if somebody's a sore loser, they call them bijambe. Okay? Which means they don't have a strong enough character to lose or even play a game. Because when you play a game, you gotta accept you're gonna win or lose. Okay? Right now that I'm on Earth, right, I'm accepting that I'm gonna win or lose here. Okay, and what that means is that in some sense, either the efforts of my vision go forth or they don't. Everybody is standing in their own mind. Everybody is trying to find a new idea to be. You know, to be honest, something our species hasn't really, it's even worthy of starting a charity for existential boredom. Existential boredom means that you have been experiencing your existence, you have acknowledged its limitations, you've tried to move those limitations, and you've reached a certain point where the free will cannot move itself. Okay? I ran after an intellectual pursuit of truth only to realize you come to a sort of conclusion where there are infinite viewpoints. Do you understand? There's infinite viewpoints. There's so many ways to look at things that after some point you don't know what to look at, and religion makes sense in the sense that if you did not create the world, then something else knows why the world is here rather than us that's in it, right? Like if I create an artwork and somebody asks me like, okay, who created this artwork? Why did you create this artwork? I'd be like, I don't know, man. I got inspired. It was in the moment, something. I had a vision. What I have noticed is that whatever we achieve is not enough. Okay, we're waiting for the next thing that happens to us, and it's either something that we make happen to ourselves or something that happens to us. When I was younger, I wanted life to happen to me. I'll be honest. I think a lot of people are like this, right? When you're younger, you want things. You don't want the outer realms to be different from your inner realms when you're younger. And based on your upbringing, you have expectations on your outer realms too. Because what goes on is that we're this intelligence that has noticed existence, but the way it's noticing existence is by creating a subjective miniature version of the world. What is going on is that two types of intelligences are living at the same time. The human intelligence is a symbiosis of an existential entity, visible existential entity, with an invisible experiential entity. This is why human beings cannot figure themselves out till the end of time, mystery of consciousness, because if they did, they would not be human. Consciousness has suggested this sort of positioning, that if we're wondering about what is beyond consciousness, we're wondering about what is beyond the awareness to the space where reality is happening. Okay? So many different human beings born with different visions, different eyes, they all roam this earth. What's going on is a genetical program is swarming all over the planet, right? So what it is if you strip away the ideology, you get rid of the language, and for a second you look at what's going on, you're going to see existential creatures that have perspectives that are different than the world they're in, and then they're constantly trying to adjust, and in some sense, just like the hammer, the sword, and the anvil, in some sense, constantly what evolution is doing is trying to see the world. Do you understand? It's like a force that started from the world but wants to see itself. Humanity is the effort of a planet to watch itself. And there's so many different kinds of beings with so many different intentions that sometimes we can't know, you know. You know, when I was younger, I thought that the reason a lot of life didn't happen, or I felt some sort of karmic exile, was because I thought I'm paying too much attention to life. Do you understand? It's like if you have the programmer's vision, right, then you don't enjoy the program, right? We're kind of blessed that we didn't create this world. Because if we had created this world, there'd be no surprises. Do you know? The universe had to forget death was so important. Because what was in some sense creating, in some sense, like, you know, they asked, what's his name? Oh my God, how do I forget his name? Orson Welles, I think. I think they asked Orson Welles about editing, and then this dude was literally, I'll never forget it. There's an interview where he's like, editing is cutting. You know, he says it like that, right? And so what it is that death and moments of failure and moments of stopping things, when things stop or things, you know, these are moments where our consciousness is trying to edit itself experientially. Excuse me, it's trying to edit itself existentially, experientially. So what does this mean? The implication of this is that human beings, or we need to, as a species, to identify the dynamic human being. We need to have, even though there is one type of existential human being, but we need to begin classifying the experiences of human beings. I've personally done this in my own school of thought, and I've divided into 4 quadrants. So right now, this is a system I use personally, system I designed and I use. But what it is I came to this conclusion that all experiences of life can fall into 4 quadrants, 4 categories. So there is 4 types of, theoretically, 4 types of conceptions. Okay? We have the void. This means creatures that are shapeless, or creatures that just exist as space. Do you understand? So let me say it this way. In the future, there's going to be voidists when it comes to the inner realms. There's going to be the dualists, which, you know, we're all dualists to some degree. There's going to be the singularians, and then there's going to be the infinitists. The infinitist is too soon right now. Probably it's going to start maybe in 400 years from now. Then the psychology of immortal psychology will become more real. Right now, people stay away from their fears and they try to go towards their comforts. Why? Because the brain knows what to do with patterns it's familiar with. It doesn't know what to do with patterns that are new. You know, sometimes we don't like a person because we haven't recognized them as a pattern. But when we see someone and we suddenly like them, we recognize, it's like we've recognized as a pattern. I'll give you an example. For example, you know, there was this girl I was really attracted to, right? And my mind had put her into a recognizable pattern where, to me, I had an affinity for her, right? So what does this mean? This means that, in some sense, my brain managed to recognize her existence as a pattern in my previous experiences, okay? But she did not. Do you see the difference? You know, the thing is, I have learned in this lifetime from people's eyes way more than I have learned from people's actions. You know, there is something about the eyes, you know. A friend of mine years ago, way before the Mr.Within, not before the Mr.Within talks, I think 2015 maybe, I went on this camping trip with, at the time, a close friend of mine, with him and his brother. We went to this camping trip. His brother was older than us. And so what happened was, in the camping trip, my friend and his brother were talking, and I was there just zoning out into the fire, looking into the fire, you know. Fire has a purification value in mysticism as well. But anyways, my friend turns to his brother and he says, it's incredible how much you can learn from just listening. And my friend's older brother, and they were both very smart people, very smart people. And so that was the sentence. I'll never forget my friend's brother saying, in some sense, when he said yeah, it was like a verification that there is so much information we can attain if we master our senses. And the most important sense to master is listening. I even wrote a book called The Ancient Listeners. You know, it's unpublished, but it exists. So, what it is that if we think of a past pattern, the human brain recognizes it, becomes familiar. Patterns that it hasn't recognized, it tries to solve. It makes sense that human beings become interested by new experiences because new experiences harbored sensory gifts. This might sound hilarious, but you know, there was a time where when I was younger, I was thinking playfully, right? I was thinking like God created the world, and then it created the human being, but hadn't created eyes yet. Then God's like, oh my God, I've created all this stuff, but there's no one to see it. And then God creates eyes for man, for example. It's just theoretical, just something hypothetical I was thinking. Everybody is an actor. But, you know, even though everybody is acting, right, but the interesting thing is we don't know who the director is. We don't know if the director of the lifetime of the individual is the individual or if it's the collective. Do you understand what it means? Do you understand what it means, the administration of intelligence? Do you understand what it means to be in a world that we didn't create? It means there has no such thing. Like the idea of a soul going from lifetime to lifetime doesn't make sense, right? What makes sense, I mean, it makes sense, and it makes sense beyond senses. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that it's a symbiosis between a universal entity and an entity that is part and parcel of the universe. Right now, if I value myself based on the past, what happened? Do you see the ridiculous thing about the sense of havingness? The Buddha was so right. Buddha's like, yo, all these human beings have desires, have these attachments, but the moment they get their desire, they want a new desire. Why? Because we're not actually enjoying life physically. We're enjoying life non-physically, but for some reason the conditioning has made this creature think that it needs an object. Like, it's weird, right? It's like, it's this question like we need to eat objective food, right? To exist as an object, right? That means we literally need to consume existence to exist. Now the idea goes to the mind. What does a non-physical being need to consume? And you know what the answer is? The answer is experience. Do you understand? Right? This might sound really... Oh man. It's like I'm noticing a truth, but the imagery is not nice. Okay. I saw this video, pretty messed up video. I apologize for sharing this, right? But it was this guy who was getting rid of these parasites that were inside this wasp. Okay? And then it was as if, for a second, it was as if there is a space for a life force, but if the life force cannot attend to its space becomes occupied. Do you understand what I mean? I mean that, for example, forget human niceness, and for a second imagine, right, a young child like gets something. Imagine there's like food welfare or something. A young kid gets food, and then some grown person comes and grabs the food from the young kid, right? What I'm saying is, we know that life is precious. We know that life is important. We know that consciousness is rare. And we have to begin wondering about what is occupying the space. My curiosity is pretty much the idea of symbiosis. I don't know why. Why, when I saw like a buffalo on Animal Planet, okay, with a bird on its back, the buffalo can't scratch its back, so the bird comes and lands on the buffalo's back, and at the same time the buffalo's presence keeps the other animals away, right? So the bird has food and the buffalo gets its back cleaned and all of this, right? So it's a symbiosis. And then I thought, like, okay, and in nature there's other examples. Like another cool example of another symbiosis is, for example, the stingfish. Okay, so there was a video that showed this crab, like this like mini lobster and this stingfish. And pretty much the stingfish was acting as defense, and the lobster, the crabfish, was building like their home where they were both living in, right? And the stingfish would give warnings to the crabfish to hide when an enemy would arise, right? And it was like an example of excellent symbiosis, right? So when I'm looking at human intelligence, right, and when I look at all the sci-fi movies we have, right, all the alien fantasy fiction we have, right? So what I'm getting the sense of is that the human species is demonstrating interest for interaction with that which is not it. Do you understand? The way our minds work is they're actually, like, this is going to sound hilarious, but you actually never see other people. You're actually experiencing your own brain. So even though you see people, what they mean, what they do, how you feel about them is all you. Do you understand? Like, a person could be standing in front of me, I could see them physically. Let's say they're wearing like, let's say there's a girl standing in front of me and she's wearing a blue t-shirt. Okay, so I see the blue t-shirt, but in some sense, do you understand, I can't see what sort of conscious attention behind her eyes is accepting what sort of archetypes of personhood to even animate as an entity in the moment. You understand what I'm saying? This life has intensities that go beyond reason. Go beyond human reason, because I mean, somebody could look at something irrational and be like, yo, this is alien rationality. Do you know what I mean? The moment I said alien rationality, the viewers went from 4 to 0. Oh my god. Do we value ourselves, or what happens to us? Do you know, I value myself, but I'm waiting to see what happens, which is where my value comes. So we do value ourselves based on what we have, okay? But it's not enough. Do you understand? Existing is not enough for existence. So it's experiencing itself. Because if it didn't have a reason to experience itself, it would just exist. Do you understand the bizarre implication of consciousness? Consciousness is suggesting either the universe had intended it all along. Do you understand what consciousness means? It means evolution turned an object into a subject to itself. The purpose of evolution was a non-physical access to reality. How bizarre, no? Anyways, let me see what I can extract from this title. So pretty much perspective, okay? Think about it. As a human being, what can you change? What are the options, okay? You can physically change or non-physically change. So think of it as if you're a physical body and you're a non-physical mind. And now, your physical, think of it, you have a physical self in a physical world, and you have a non-physical self in a non-physical world. And so what I'm saying is that what if physical existence is the seed in the soil of the void, and consciousness is how it has sprouted? The DNA transformed is on its journey to becoming a transcendental position. Whoever you might be, you know, technically through the medium of time, there's three types of relationships, right? Right now, I look at myself and I'm like, this is a self. I can judge it based on this guy's past. You know, this guy, you know, his past is his value. And then I could be in the present and I could be like, yo, you know, forget what I did in the past. Forget what I will do in the future. I'm just going to be in the present. I have no value. So you can choose to be a no value person, by the way. It's very easy. You just stop caring for the idea of you. That's the fastest way to dehumanize. You know, there was a time I realized that I'm treating others, you know, like, you know, good human beings, like advanced human beings, but I'm not treating myself like an advanced human being. And so the question came, oh, you mysterious attention that has appeared, that has arrived in this world, oh, you who have an existential singular position in the space-time continuum, and oh, you who have an experiential creative position when it comes to the meaning of your reality. Oh, creator of meaning, and oh, creation of shape. The moment has come. The human species no longer needs to awaken because it is no longer asleep. It is a matter of living as a universal being in all your lifetimes. You know, I mean, even before your ancestors were human, right? There was no privilege. There wasn't a privilege to be conscious in a world. Do you understand what existing as a human being is? You have entered the balcony of manifestation. The sight you have access to from where you're standing is unbelievable. But because it is unbelievable, it makes you wonder about your beliefs. It makes you wonder about how your attention is holding reality. It makes you wonder about if God is an idea or if God never was an idea. If there is something else, do you know? Our species was a hunter-gatherer species, okay? And what that means is we are masters at hunting for new experiences and gathering new information. Do you understand? So we have, in some sense, the yin, the feminine expression of the species, being in some sense the gathering of information. Do you understand? And then we need new experiences in some sense. So in some sense, it's as if like the hunters find new realities and they bring it back to earth, to the tribe, bring it back to the tribe, bring it back to the human species, and then we have gatherers that in some sense process it, right? Right now in these Mr. Within talks, I'm acting as a hunter and a gatherer. Do you know? I'm hunting for new things that have never been spoken about, and at the same time, I am in some sense gathering what has been said before. And do you know what I realized? To be honest, you know, there was this chess master who was giving this hilarious advice, and he's like, sometimes I make so many calculations and then I make a move that had nothing to do with my calculations, just because it's a new move I discovered. You know, I thought about it. Imagine, right, you put the most handsome, most powerful, most wealthy in all human categories, perfect human being, and then imagine you had an unknown human being, okay? A human being that you didn't know what their attributes were. You didn't know if they were great or if they were bad or if they were good. So if you had a mystery human and you had the greatest human, right? Not the greatest human, but the strongest human, like the most perfect human, okay? The most utopically perfect human. And then you had an unknown human. You had a known box and you had a mystery box, right? And which one would you choose? And if you choose the known box, you have actually sold your soul. Let me tell you why. You sell your soul when you stop being the totality of your life force. That's it. And the only one who can authorize the selling of souls, this is the hilarious thing, is in some sense the one who created the souls. Do you understand? Like, human beings are playing games with the idea of the soul, right? But theologically, the angels and God are like, what are these like noobs doing? You know? You know, evil is boring. How many freaking Jokers are gonna laugh? Like, it's boring. Like, how many Batmans need to punch Jokers in the face? Like, it's boring, right? Good and evil is boring. How many times are we gonna show children, right, cartoons of superheroes punching villains in the face, right? Like, for how long? Good and evil is endless. You see it in everything. I thought I was seeing like Superman or Batman and Joker, like the superhero and the villain in childhood cartoons. I see it in anything. I see it in insect life, in animal life. I see it in the battle of ideological systems with one another. The same way human beings are fighting with one another to compete, the same way ideological systems are competing to stay in the attention of man. Do you understand? The ideas of the past, ideas in the present, and ideas in the future, they're all fighting for the space of your attention. Because what is sacred in this world is not the world. It's where it's happening in. You are God's sight. And when you realize you are in God's sight, that's divine insight. You know, it's weird. It's like we have the expectations of paradise, from a place where people are trying to get to paradise too. Trying to get to paradise. But regardless of how your attention animates your moment of being, regardless of what sort of intelligence finds you in the moment, at least you get to see what it is Do you understand? I was thinking like, yo, I've been born to die. Is that it? And I was like, no, at least I get to see what happens. Do you understand? It's like we may not have total authority in the outer realms. Like I could want like to lift up all buildings into the sky and raise my hand in my inner realms, like that's happening, but in the outer realms it's not. Can you imagine, like back in the day in a fictional context, there was this next level magician, mage, not a magician, a mage, okay? And then imagine aliens were attacking this fantasy timeline, and this magician in some sense teleported the human species completely somewhere else. Imagine. You know, I'm looking at snow right now. It's snowing, the snow is falling on the ground on other snow. And to be honest, I'm starting to get a sense that human life is like a Tetris game. The idea is that we make the best move as our Tetris piece. It's like a Tetris game, but the Tetris pieces are being actually moved by themselves, not only by like some invisible hand. You know, it's as if like, the spiritual person, religious person looked at the, capitalistic atheist, and he's like, buddy, you're believing in an invisible hand in the economy. It's like, what, you don't think there's an invisible hand outside of the economy? This life is so incredible. I've experienced so many moments where I've just felt like I've failed. And I've felt like I've been victorious. Some days the mission has been complete. The future is already at its destination. Do you know? This might sound strange, but Earth is a vacation spot for multidimensional beings. Why? Because its future is assured. We are the golden species. We're the golden ticket. That means we've become conscious, part of an evolutionary legacy that will reach such heights of complexity, and it has journeyed through heights of complexity. 4.5 billion years. Let me tell you how many days that is. Right? 4.5 billion years into days. Let's see what the exponential number would be. Okay, it's not even an exponential number here. I mean, it can be. What is this? 3, 6. Okay, this is how many days. Okay, so check this out, viewers. So, all those days of experiences happening throughout the day. Do you understand the archive? We are literally like so easily thinking we're human, but we're the tip of the iceberg. Imagine, I can't even say this number. What is it? 3, 6. It's like 425 to the power of times 10 to the power of 7. Yeah, 164,250,000,000 days. 250 billion days. Yeah, 164 trillion 250 billion days of genetic experiential sculpting. Just think about how much change has happened through all that time. And 4.5 billion years is just from the planet, from when the planet, got here. $4.5 billion years of, the evolution, the journey of the creature. 4.5 billion year old planet, and then I think 200,000 years ago, consciousness popped, etc. No, I mean it's not that problem. I think civilization is like a 200,000 year old effort. The type of civilization we have access now. What is the destiny of energy? Energy is literally like a chained titan, okay? It's as if I don't know, energy, it cannot be created or destroyed. It changes form to form. If energy is consciousness itself, this means that if you strip away intelligence from the idea of soul, you get the idea of energy. Something that reincarnates from life to life but cannot die. You see, we human beings are functioning under the knowledge that we die, because what we see is what we identify as. We're not identifying as the non-physical, non-visible seer of the moment. That means what you see may change, but what is seeing change seems to not change, strangely. That means I experience a whole day, but there's something that feels unchanged from the beginning of the day till the end of the day. But it's not something of form. It's the awareness. It's like space, since it doesn't have content, it's there and it doesn't change. You know what it means? That means we can only consider the idea of the temporal through the idea of an absolute. So this means the absolute has to exist. This means that truth has to exist before the simulation, because what is the simulation a simulation of? Right now, consciousness is experiencing an elemental life. Knowledge of biology, chemistry, and certain things about philosophy in regards to ethics, the philosophy of physics, the philosophy of metaphysics, the philosophy of religion, and in some sense the medical sciences. I want in the future, I've envisioned an advanced civilization where by middle school, children will have as much knowledge as a doctor. Do you understand? And they will in some sense have so much knowledge about, I don't know how to say it, but by middle school, children will have university level of knowledge. And then in high school, they begin their work, The educational system in the future, most likely what's going to happen, it's going to revert to a digital point system. What does that mean? That means all these politicians, right? I'm not a politician, but I don't know why politicians haven't thought of this, right? So all the politicians are like, yo, we got to get kids out of the streets of these like dangerous neighborhoods and get them back in schools. And then people are like, yeah, we got to do that. But how? So the answer is, why is the kid leaving school? Because media gives the kid desires, right, that it feels it has to fulfill quickly. Children are maturing at a ridiculous pace due to the internet. Do you understand? The internet is destroying childhood, right? But maybe it's part of the plan, right? Maybe this is part of the universal plan. Maybe for us to treat ourselves as children, maybe the simplicity is something that, do you know, maybe in history books they'll write like children didn't know stuff when they were born, right? Imagine in the future children are born with like next level cyberspace and engineering and all of this genetic engineering, knowing everything. Do you understand? Can you imagine the first hospital that in some sense they brought forth brought forth children like that were like 8 Einsteins came from the same hospital? Imagine in the future. What I'm saying is right now, consciousness is experiencing, just like Texas Hold'em, like the nature and the universe giving it a hand. Right now, the world is playing with us, okay? And we're playing with the world. Right now, 2023, it's a symbiosis of the unnatural, technological, leading free will, and in some sense, the natural, the natural will. Anyways, the species, the human creature, it has come a long way, and it has not arrived. It has not journeyed so far to watch its failure. Creatures are self-obsessed. They have to be to existentially survive. But after they succeed in their self-obsessions, right, they begin to see a different side of life. You know, if you're someone who you've had the privilege of being selfish and greedy when you're young, you will get to see its result. You will get to see how the world treats you when you take from it, and how the world treats you when you give it. You know, a big lesson for me has been to do what poetically, not what myself wants only, not only what my species wants only, but what my world wants. The reason I'm talking about an advanced civilization is because I'm having a universal experience of this world. What does that mean? That means the moment I realize my attention is an opportunity for the whole universe to experience itself again, I thought I have entered this world to experience life, but little did I know, all of life is experiencing itself through me. I am the universe in disguise as a human being for a little while. And so what does the universe do when it's a human being? It moves. And the greatest movement of the human intelligence is exploration. To explore what lies ahead. To explore the depths of the dimensions of reality. You know, there are so many ideological systems. Oh, children of the future generations, be careful. There's so many damn ideological systems that will possess you to, in some sense, make you feel they are true. But beyond these ideological systems, you will realize that you are directly experiencing life. And so there are some people who read books, and there are some people who experience life. This is the difference between a holy man, so let's say a religious man, and a holy man. A religious man believes in the religion. A holy man is no longer at a point where he believes because he has experienced. Gnosis has arose like dawn in the darkest hour. It may not be easy for 8 billion creatures that are obsessed with the idea of themselves to step beyond their inner realms, to climb out of their private universes, and to neutrally step out into the world and to begin again. Because to be an explorer means to go where no one else has. This is the value of your DNA. This is the value of your existence. To go where your species has not. Then you will be a champion. Then the history books can't wait to write your name. Because you did not forget about an unknown world when there was the pleasures of a known one. Do you understand? Right, there's something when I was younger I didn't understand. Why a person could be in a perfect state, they have everything, but suddenly they leave. Right? You know, I'm someone who, it's not like I'm a party animal or anything, but there was a time where I remember, like, usually, I don't drink anymore, but there was a time where I used to drink just with friends and whatnot. And so this was in London, Ontario. I remember I got incredibly intoxicated and I became incredibly extroverted for like 20 minutes. And then after that, there was this feeling like I felt like leaving the environment and going and finding my own liminal moment, my own rare moment, right? You don't know how many times I've been in situations where it's been overcrowded and I've just literally walked out of there and gone and found a new moment where nobody has been there and sat there alone, claiming that moment as a place where my presence is going to reside. Do you understand? It's kind of like they say, it's kind of like I'm treating my mind as a bird. Do you understand what I mean? That means if something comes in front of me, right, if a matter of ego comes, the bird just flies off the branch. Do you understand? This is the ability. This is what the spiritual life gives you. A spiritual life gives you a relationship with the unknown. If you just are materialist, you will not understand it. If you just are immaterialist, you will not understand it. Only if you realize that spirituality is a round circle. What that means is you start off thinking being a physical entity, being in a physical world is wrong. Right? And most yogis, back in the day, they were trying to renounce the physical realm. They were trying to renounce samsara, but little did they know samsara was not outside of them. Samsara was inside of them. This is why all the sages have been like, look at your karma. Look at what's happening to you. It's the greatest clue of what you have done. It is the greatest clue to what you are. Like, if I'm a being that has been born on this planet and I've decided to talk a lot, it's as if I'm a being that has been familiar with realms of mind. Do you understand? That means that I could have come into this world and been a soccer player. I wanted to be a soccer player and I'm good at soccer, right? Even though I didn't have the lungs for it at the time, right? Like, if somebody gives me a soccer ball, it's going to take you a while to get that soccer ball back, But at the same time, I was like, look at where life brought me, My passion for a physical life literally went to an inner life output. Do you understand? And you know, it's honestly thanks to my father. He was so ahead of his time. You know, I will tell you this, whoever you are, this is what I have observed about greatness. I'm somebody who's climbing the mountain yet, still. But what I have observed about greatness is that greatness blooms in the presence of those who were greater before. Do you understand? We're walking among the great. Some people think the great people in history are dead. They think the champions of